right, we're live on the mics.
What about the left side?
Hello, hello. Here we go.
Okay.
And 5, 4, 3.
Welcome, everyone, and pull up a seat at the table. It is lunchtime in Rome. Tonight is episode 173, entitled Podcast Meeting. This week at the table, we're having a meeting about the future of the podcast.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? What type of guests should we have? What topics should we cover? How is our overall format? We're talking about that at the table this evening. Pull up a seat at the table and join us. First-time listeners can subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Watch us live at lunchtimeinrome.com/live or listen directly on lunchtimeinrome.com. While there, you can take our relational needs questionnaire. Make sure to follow us on all social media, and it would be great if you gave us a 5-star review. Jay, what specifically is this podcast about?
Being alone is the worst. Good times aren't as good, and bad times are worse when you're all alone. Romans 12:15 says to rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. That is how you keep people from being alone and what this podcast is all about. We normally demonstrate that in the first 15 minutes of the podcast and talk about it for the rest. So while it may not be 12:15 in Rome, we're treating it like it is
Planning meeting in Rome.
podcast. I feel like we should pipe in music of like dishes and glasses, like live on location. Somebody comes up and interrupts, gets an order.
Mm-hmm.
Get that going.
So I'm excited about tonight just because it's completely different. There's no format except we've got a loose outline. We've been trying to schedule a podcast meeting. Could have had it last week if I wasn't doing a pre-marriage teaching. I was just meeting with somebody. But anyhow, and so we threw the idea together, and here we are.
Here we are.
So what are we meeting about?
Podcast.
All right.
We're meeting about potential changes and growth and the direction we
Now,
want to
you
go
would not
in.
say that if we were sitting in Mohan's.
What are you talking about?
Stop talking like you're on a podcast.
Yeah, well, it's an evolution.
This
I
is
think
exactly
the
how I
best.
talk all the time.
It's evolution. How's this podcast?
That's more creation, I think.
We've created it. Now it's evolving. And so I think that would be the initial overview of this. How is this podcast going to evolve? What do we want? What do our listeners want? Not listen, people at the table. What does that evolution look like?
Right.
Well, I know like our vision has been like everybody needs to know this.
Right.
And only
And not everybody knows this.
not everybody knows this, and we want to expand that audience.
Well, and I think those who sit at the table with us, which I would say that if we were sitting somewhere else. All right, I'm out of that. Those who sit at the table with us sit at the table with us. And I think we have, and again, analytics being what they are, is hard to get in this realm. I would say that the people who listen with a good bit of regularity.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of grieve the loss of Josh. I don't know if Josh listens anymore.
Josh Hughes.
Yeah, Josh.
I used to tune in live.
Right.
Yeah.
Instantly.
So he could be listening. I don't know. But
Yeah.
other than that, I don't know many people who did listen who don't listen.
Well, and we're 100. This is our 173rd episode, and
That is like 170 more than the average podcast.
it's a lot. I mean,
It is a lot.
we've been doing this since November of 2018 was our first podcast.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just feel there's a lot, and I appreciate every single person who listens. I would like to know more about who listens, and what you're getting out of these podcasts. I'd like to know how regularly people listen. And I would like a lot more people to listen and interact and just take this on a much bigger scale with a lot more engagement and a lot more interaction, because we can talk about content, and we do talk about content, and I love that. But I know for me, a conversation is much more compelling, and we have a great conversation here. But for me, I just love to hear feedback and interaction. So I'd like to see us figure out ways to figure out how to grow that.
I don't know.
Well, and to add to that, I think there are times where it's like live feedback is helpful to the discussion that we're having in the moment. And then there's also times where it would be nice to have feedback, like even from people who are listening later, like adding comments in that can become part of like a follow-up, maybe like the next episode where like, oh, here are some further thoughts on what we covered last week. Like that could be
Well, sure, both would be outstanding.
Yeah. So
I
how
mean, we don't have much of either.
Right.
And
So
I
how
think
do
the
we-
live is a lofty goal. I mean, I know you do as well, listen to Adam and Dr. Drew. And, they have people call in. But there's even times they don't have people call in. They don't have any
They'll
callers.
just do the show, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They just do the show. And they're like, do we have any callers? No, we don't have any callers. And it's like,
Yeah.
all right. So that's a loftier goal.
Yeah.
But as far as any kind of feedback, I think that's reasonable to hope for and expect, and something we don't have a lot of.
I think our message, one of the things that's really challenged me is that what we talk about is in a lot of ways a very foreign concept to people. They do the the personality tests or the
Enneagram.
Yeah, they do the 5 love languages. They concentrate on their physical health, their mental health.
Maybe.
But, what's that?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But how often do we talk about our emotional health, and especially as men? Like, oh, emotions are bad, and so I think when we do get feedback from people that we may not even know, like that are on the other side of the world, or like I remember the one time, Jay, you were talking about somebody that listened to us when they vacuum their house or something, and
Right.
and it's like things like that are just amazing to me, and so
we do get those nuggets. Like every once in a while, we get that one person
Yeah.
that's like, hey, it really meant a lot to me. Sorry
We do,
for
and
that.
this isn't about like I'm not saying that this is about us saying, hey, we want to know how we're impacting you so that we feel good about it. We just want to know that we're making an impact
And how to make it greater.
and how to make that greater. And so I think because what we are doing is so vital to people.
I love when we get that feedback, and it does make me feel good, even though not
Duke has already commented emotions are the devil, in fact. Which was his statement at one point in time. That was his drop. He and Lydia were telling me that was the drop from his episode. Emotions are the devil. Bum, ba, da, bum, bum. And Patton.
I can't
Chimed
always
in.
listen, watch
Oh,
live.
nice. Patton's live.
I usually download episodes and listen at work weekly. I usually listen to 2 to 4 a week.
Yeah, he's been catching up.
Yeah.
He'll go through the past
Well, even that
episodes.
kinda-
and,
He's like,
I
man,
was
your
talking to
audio's
him
gotten a lot better.
from the beginning. Yeah.
Here's something small. A small suggestion to get more input would be to maybe, I was going to say at the end, it could be any time during the episode, but maybe revisit it at the end as like, whenever you're listening to this, wherever you are, chime in, give us a comment on this topic, whatever question we lay out to them that we will cover as like part
You
of
mean
the
like how we
intro.
ask for the 5-star reviews that we haven't had in over a year?
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make. Like we say it at the beginning of every show, and
But nobody listens to that. I don't think.
Regular people don't listen. I think they just go skip, skip, and they get to the
Right,
What do they do?
Yeah, skip, skip. Well, and the other thing, we don't have like we don't have a platform on our own. We could on our website for people to put comments, but I was gonna say I think one of the next steps we need to do is start putting our show on like third-party sites, like something like Substack. Like we post every show with the show notes on Substack with the YouTube episode or the
Sure.
SoundCloud.
So in the hopes that people would search for and find?
Right.
You're
And-
talking about,
That's your world, not mine.
Well,
I mean,
and it's a place like I know Brian, you have your Substack, and people engage with it. That's the thing. Like they do engage with it. Like it's an established platform that people can engage with. I know we have Facebook, and we
I don't
could,
want to be on Facebook.
I don't like. I'm not on Facebook. I know it's, and I don't know where it's going, but like, I feel like we need to put like every episode on social media, like no matter what, and like we need to have our ear to the ground because like that's the one thing. And if we're being real, and you guys are just at the table. My biggest frustration with now is that there's so many different social medias that you have to like put your ear to the ground and keep track of and like have that conversation, and it's overwhelming. Like that you have to like check all these boxes and make sure that all these places and everything has to
you know
sing
what we
together.
need?
don't say it.
We need Woof.
Oh yeah.
The best thing you could have said.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
the best thing you could have said.
Well,
Well,
your hero.
Dude, we're gonna get faxes to people. Everything. Yeah.
Just you woof it, and just no matter what you're lit on, it comes to you.
I believe that we need more collaboration, and this is either guests that we're bringing in or being guests on other platforms, other podcasts,
Sure.
because part of expanding an audience is going to other people that already have an audience.
Well, and that's a great point. We've talked about that.
Right.
All right. Who we getting and how we getting them? We had said in our last meeting, actually, I think I want to say 2 meetings ago, hey, one a month is just us. One a month is topical. One a month is a guest that we know, so it's a personal interest. And then once a month is somebody who has an audience that we can reach out to.
We just haven't reached out.
I've reached out some. Haven't had a lot of biters.
The other thing is, up until this point, and this ties in kind of with the technology, is Eric has figured out a way to actually do like a Skype or something.
Yes, I've ordered that cable, but yes.
So up until this point, we haven't been able, like, it has to be either in the studio or we don't have a guest. But
True.
Now we're at the point where we can, build relationships with people that say, hey, you have an hour on Wednesday night. You want to come on our podcast?
That would certainly make it easier.
Much easier and more plentiful. So I think that, we have now answered that question, right, Eric? As far as
I don't think anybody's against it.
how do we make that work?
But having somebody on through a phone
Remote.
call. Yeah.
Yeah, we've now
definitely-
answered that question and
Yeah.
are ready to go. I mean, once you order the dongle or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, what kind of people do we want on?
Yeah. People that are to me, people that talk about, maybe we bring somebody that talks about the 5 love languages. I'm not saying that we should. I'm just saying, what's our niche? I think it all comes back down to what is this message that we're doing, and then go in concentric circles from that. So what is our?
Well, I think the interesting thing about our podcast is that anybody can relate to it. So I don't think it matters like who we get. Like we can have somebody take the relational questionnaire and we can talk about that. We can talk about we can pick apart. Like we can do that
Right.
with anybody, whether they're a local celebrity or they're one of our friends that we just want to have on
But
the
to
show
Brian's
and talk.
point,
Yeah.
it's again, it goes back to our meeting 2 meetings ago. There's 2 groups of people that we need to have on the show, and that is people who are normal people, and we pick apart their lives and their emotional needs, and we get to learn about ourselves through them, and experts in the field who have an audience.
Right.
That's sort of what you were just saying.
Right.
So, I mean, we just start hammering, Dr. Drew. Just kidding. But people like
No,
like that.
why
but-
not?
Right. Well, because I wouldn't think he would, but you never know.
You never know.
Dr. Oz. Mehmet
He's
Oz.
campaigning.
Let's get him and Fetterman on at the same time.
No, that's just so unproductive.
Talk
Absolutely
about
not.
relational needs. Yeah.
There's a lot. So the fact that we can do that, who does that then? Do we all just do that?
Well,
We all try to
that
get our own?
goes into another point about scale, and because one of Eric's points, one of his things is we need to be putting out 2-minute blurbs or 2-minute segments of our podcast.
Right.
Things like that, little bits that you're scrolling through Instagram and you see, like, I don't know, I have like PragerU, I don't know, things like that where
Denny.
you pause and watch for 2 minutes and go, okay, they've done a whole hour on this, or Joe Rogan will put a 3-minute segment out
On YouTube and stuff, sure.
So that's something that Eric's brought up that we need to be doing, or that we want to be doing. However, those kind of things are going to require production. And Eric's certainly not in a position to do that. And production's going to require finances. It's going to require monetization, which is another aspect of what we need to do.
Why does it inherently require monetization?
Well,
or money?
so number one, unless we find a dedicated person that's like, I will volunteer and I will actually do this consistently every day, every week, whatever we decide, we're gonna have to pay like a Fiverr service or something like that to do those things. The other thing is, if we want to have more exposure through those means and not just make it organic, but make it more targeted, we're talking pay-per-click. We're talking those kind of things, which do require money. So that's the scale that we're going, like that's what we are going, that's what we're facing if we want to scale this in a more aggressive way. If we're not into that kind of stuff, then the next scale will be having more people on, which still means more man hours to contact people and setting it up to get them on here. So either way, we're, if we want to expand, we're looking at a more of an investment, whether it's time, money, or both.
I don't disagree, and I think we do. I think we do need to do both. I think, and I don't think it would be that hard. I think we need to ramp up social media and get us out there on other platforms, and be prepared for when we get somebody of popularity. You know what I mean? Because like if we're moving like we are now, like we need to cast a larger net.
Yeah.
So that when we get that person on here, when we cast that larger net, it's in front of more eyeballs.
There's been part of me that's been as number one, I just love to do this. I love when, like last week when we talked about respect. If you haven't watched it, episode 172, we talked about respect. We went for an hour and 20 minutes. We could talk for a long time about this stuff, and I love that. Mm-hmm. Crap, I forget where I was going with that now.
Well, and I quickly want to acknowledge Patton in his comments and just saying how much it has helped him and how it has helped him. Patton, you're exactly why we do this. You know, bro hanging out in the middle of nowhere, with all due respect, West Virginia, having his life changed and helping him be a little more self-actualized and self-realized. Buddy, and do not apologize for all your different comments.
Dude, I played Fortnite with him last night. We got a dub. It was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Just saying.
Nice.
So we're not ignoring that. And
Yeah.
Patton,
Thank you.
You are very important to us. My
Yep.
gosh. So, yeah, I mean, I would...
I know. I remember.
He found it.
I found it. So number one, I enjoy doing the actual content, but there's been part of me that's like, we're on 172, we're on 173. And I've had this thought that somebody somewhere, because we're on all the podcast apps, we've been doing this so consistently and putting out great content. Part of me was like, somebody's going to find us like an Oprah moment, and we're going, we're going to organically get this momentum.
Right.
It hasn't happened, and in a lot of ways, part of me feels like we've contracted. And I don't know if that's true or not, because we don't really have the data to understand what our audience is. So that's kind of been not a frustration, but just I'm glad to do what we're doing, and I'll do it until the day that we can't do it anymore, because it's what we're doing matters to some, Patton. And I, again, appreciate those inputs
And all of the Pattons out there.
Yeah, absolutely. But then there's that side of it. It's just like, well,
To a degree, are we missing something or are we missing a greater opportunity?
Right.
Is what you're saying.
100%. And we are, I believe.
Right. To your first point on, that hoping that we go wildly viral at some point because somebody's somewhere. And Eric almost kiddingly said, not yet. Mm-hmm. What I've known to do my whole life, and what you hear in a lot of success stories is, it's an overnight success story.
5 years in the making.
20, but
Right.
whatever. My thing is keep my head down, keep moving. Doesn't mean we can't work smarter.
Sure.
I also don't want to say we're going to do this and it's 15 steps that's far beyond what we're capable of doing.
Right.
Right.
And so I certainly don't, I would much rather be sticking to who we are and what we do. Like, you're saying the pay for clicks or that. Like, I don't want to get into hiring people per se.
Right.
I would rather have somebody, that we would think and pray more about, hey, let's expand the table. Like, okay, they're not going to be here with a headset and a mic, but hey, we could have a social media coordinator
Right.
easily. Somebody might want to do that.
Right. Well, and I definitely hear your point about keeping your head down and just doing what we've been
Right,
doing.
which you said as much.
And if we're happy with that, then great.
I mean, I would rather this went out to 2 million people a week.
Right.
That'd be cool.
And if those 2 million told 2 people each, anyhow.
That would be 6 million.
And then those 6 million, anyhow.
And those people gave us $1.
Right.
I have this idea for this thing called Facebook.
Duke said the main strategy for channels who want to get as big as possible in as little as time as possible to find a niche, which you've done clearly, and rub shoulders with other channels' audiences, which is what we sort of said.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. Is
I
getting.
think that's the easiest first way to go. I mean, honestly, all that takes is somebody consistently reaching out. And I think, like you said, Eric, something like a Substack, which I found, some okay success with in my own, what I do on there. I got a podcast episode that wasn't even this one, the Lunchtime in Rome, with somebody that I was going back and forth with.
Yeah.
We did a podcast together just
Right.
on my computer.
Don't forget about your non-compete.
Oh crap. So, I think if we're gonna talk, well, obviously we don't have the budget, but if we're not gonna go and do this whole, hey, let's get a producer and do all these things, I think a combination between somebody consistently looking for other people that are influencers and also having, like you said, something in addition to our website.
Yeah.
I think those are the two low-hanging fruits.
Let me ask this question. Of the men who are presently at the table, which I believe is the four of us, I don't know if Duke and Patton are still with us. So who has a podcast that is similar to ours, or that we could, like, the reason why I say that is I laugh because I don't listen to any other podcasts about, like I'm either egotistical enough or whatever else. Like I don't listen to podcasts that are about relational needs.
Well, I mean, no disrespect, but what was that one that you always told us to listen to? Amy listened to it, but I never did.
I did until the sound quality and the guests got really weird. The Place We Find Ourselves.
Yeah, that one.
Because that dude, I just disparaged his sound.
Yeah, he's not coming on now.
No, it's over. Yeah, that was that one. The Place We Find Ourselves. There was a couple good podcasts. He had a couple good episodes, and then I was like, I don't really care about this anymore. So that's kind of interesting that none of us listen to any other podcast like this.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that there's not a whole variety
There's
of
a
things
billion
out there.
podcasts
Yeah.
out there, but I'm saying
Yeah.
we're sitting here at the table, and none of us have an idea what that would be.
No, I listen to Joe Rogan primarily, and I love the format because he's constantly bringing all different types of guests on, but they talk about things that are very relatable. And so, in a lot of ways, I see that, like, we don't necessarily need a niche. We know what we are, and we're very good at talking with people. We can talk for hours. And so, to me, let's bring on anybody that has some semblance of an interest in this topic, wherever they come from, and we can have a conversation.
Sure.
I like it.
Yeah.
Because he's bringing, like, he'll bring a person on, and they've written a book, or they're a professor, or they're this and that, and they eventually get to something that everybody can relate to.
Right.
They have their following, and Joe Rogan stuff goes out to their following, but then they can still talk about for 2.5, 3, 4 hours about really interesting things. And as long as we stay true to who we are and have people that are willing to dialogue with us, even in the realm of what we do, we could have so many conversations. So
what is step one in that direction? Like, what do we do absolutely first?
And whose responsibility is it to procure said guests? Because
well,
we can talk about all we want.
Right. I'm not guest guy.
I am.
Yeah, I know you. Yeah, you definitely are. I mean, I can reach people in my life.
Well, I think we'll set up a Substack, and I'll start building that audience and reaching out to people, and I'll run with that.
All right. So you're gonna set up Substack.
I will set up Substack. Okay. And what we'll do, I guess, is just link it to lunchtimeinrome.com. Right?
Yeah, and maybe there might be. I wonder if there's a WordPress plugin that can.
I don't know. They're. I don't think that we could look. I don't think they would go that route. Like they're basically like a better version of WordPress on their own.
But you don't think there would be like a WordPress app that would automatically post to Substack?
I don't know.
All right,
We can look into that.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
But setting up our own is going to be, I think, because I know the formula there now in Substack. So,
Yeah.
and then that'll start generating conversations. I mean, I posted our Respect podcast from last week on my page. And I mean, I think I have over 40 comments on it, and some really, really interesting points in conversation.
Yeah, that's why I chuckled from that one.
Yeah, right. So the guy that is incredibly alone and has no friends.
Wow, I wasn't going to go that far. But
Yeah.
it was like,
Oh,
don't need respect, don't need anything from anybody. I'm an island.
He's like, these are not
All right,
needs.
buddy.
Well, I mean, and he was like, these aren't even needs. He's like, I don't even think water and air are needs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, wait a second. Do you consider love a need? Do you consider human
Nope.
interaction a need? Not really a need, no. All right. So, but it was a conversation, like it was a mini conversation that I had, and I'm just doing that in my free time,
Right.
You know, and it's fun. It's fun, but it's also really constructive. So I do think that you know, if we're talking very low hanging fruit, that's the way to go, and I'm willing to run with that. I'd like to run with
Well, I
that.
think it should be on all of our minds. You know, it can be your responsibility per se, but it should be on all of our minds. Like you said, Eric, you know, that's not really what you do because you do a whole lot of the other stuff. But, you know, even if it's you're talking at school about some kid and you're talking to the school psychologist. Well, I know that's not somebody who has their own podcast, but as far
No,
as an
great.
expert,
Bring them on. Just bring
Right.
them on because it's a
Right.
great conversation.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
and then you can.
and I mean, I'll reach out. I mean, again, yeah, I'll throw flyers. I think we should all be throwing flyers out there.
Yeah.
You know, like what, for the home run.
We talked about the two categories being normal people who might take the relational
Yeah,
needs
it's kind of
questionnaire
three,
and
isn't it?
whatnot. Yeah, and then like the
Influencers with their-
influencers / professionals, but like combining those is the third category I was gonna add. I don't know if that's a different one from you, Jay, but like, and I think Eric, you mentioned local celebrity, and we can use that term.
There's four
loosely.
categories.
Okay, but
Because there's
Go ahead.
Sorry, there's normal everyday Joe. Come up, everybody can identify with him. You know, Trixie, who listens to who sits at the table all the time, said, "You've never had somebody like me, and every guest you have on, I learned something about myself." So that's the value of having the everyday person.
Yeah, that's great.
You have an expert in the field, so that would be your school psychologist.
right.
You have the expert in the field with an audience,
That's the influencer / podcaster.
similar podcast,
Yeah.
who has an audience,
Dr. Drew.
right? And then you have the regular everyday Joe who happens to be famous,
Right.
who isn't in our field.
Right. Who brings an audience
Mike Clark.
because they are
Mike Clark from
Yeah.
WTAE News.
right.
Yeah. He'd
Someone
come on a heartbeat.
that's amazing. That would be an amazing place to
I
start.
say somewhat lofty goalish.
And of course, it has to be somebody who
Paul Alexander.
who is okay talking about their life. I mean,
Shelley Duffy.
like someone like Mike Clark on the news. Like they already have a public
She has points.
life, so I'm sure not everyone is comfortable coming on and talking all about their childhood.
Yeah, but
or
if
all
they're
those
gonna,
are the four
but if they're
categories.
going to
But
come on,
there are
we,
some people who, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
we talk about, okay, what are no-fly zones, and then what are you
right.
comfortable talking about?
Sure.
You know, we
Right.
define that ahead
We've
of
done
time.
that with guests before.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right.
4 categories.
I like it.
And I think Mike would come on because he and I had that great conversation just talking about loss and grief and moving on.
We should do something about that.
I should probably reach out to him.
Yeah,
Okay.
All right, I'll do that.
appreciate that.
I'm gonna try for Troy Polamalu.
Great.
Talk about how he just went to Children's Hospital, except never when Trey was there. Cool.
I think
Wait,
you
what
should,
did you say?
you should lead with that.
I said talk about how he's always at Children's Hospital, except never when Trey was there. Though to be fair, I did see him one night, and I was like, oh, he's leaving. Cool.
Well, what about monetization?
We've talked about that before.
I don't know
we've talked
anything
that
about it.
before. Is it something that we want to do?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
That was
like,
pretty quick.
Yeah, and desperate.
well, things cost money.
Yeah, they do.
You
and,
know?
Yeah.
We've
what
got
is
a,
that?
We've got a sweet setup, but like
give
you
me
know,
give me like the beginner lesson in that though. Like I know you mentioned
Monetization.
like clicks and
Okay,
whatnot, but
so-
like, well, wait. Let me ask this lead off question though, and then I'm gonna listen to
No,
everything
no,
you
absolutely.
have to
Go
say.
for it.
And that is,
Here's what you should say.
put your finger away. And that is, is the goal of monetization to bring in money? I would assume it is, but does it take money to start it off? How does that work?
I mean, I like
It
money.
Could be both ways. It could be, well, so things
I
li-
like
things
money. I like
things
money.
like okay, so things like YouTube views, like you see these dumb YouTubers, and they're not dumb because they're making like
There's a formula.
There are YouTubers making 5-6 figures a month
Right.
Seven figures a
by the number of views that they get. Right? I mean, that's pretty lofty, but that is one example of a monetization. and it's you put yourself on YouTube, you make an audience, YouTube pays you for
Disney collector
for the
here.
eyeballs. You have monetization through sponsorship. You have monetization through, what are some other ways, Eric?
I mean, I'm a big fan.
Donations.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of value for value. So like I
Yes.
would not mind opening it up for people to give whatever they feel is worth giving to us. I don't say let's be a nonprofit, but I'm saying like if you have gotten value from this, what is that value? And what is it? A cup of coffee? Is it $1,000? Like whatever that number is in your head. Like there's a podcast I subscribe to, $11 a month. That's what I pay because it's kind of like on par with other subscription services.
With that sort of thing, does there come some sort of accountability and responsibility as far as how we're spending that money and what?
Well, I mean, for me, it's like I want them to keep going. Like, I mean, things do cost money. Like the website costs money.
Sure.
We have to pay for the bandwidth. We have to pay for hosting
Right.
the podcast.
No, there's already been lots of money put
right,
into
but
yeah,
just lights
absolutely.
on, just keeping the lights on
But
costs
Chris,
money.
to your end, if somebody says it's sort of like instead of us charging admission or making it a pay service, they pay whatever they want. I don't
Right.
go to the movies and pay $8 for a ticket and go, where's that $8 going?
Right, sure, okay.
So no, we do with what we want with the money. There's no accountability per
Right.
se with
and it's them giving what they feel like they want to give.
Right.
Like
It's worth nothing.
that's the genius of
send
the
nothing.
model.
Yeah, some people might pay $100 a month because they're like, I feel like I'm getting $100 a month. At the bare minimum, we should be breaking
Talking
even.
about it.
No,
We should be keeping the lights on.
we should
for
be.
sure.
This is not a $1 million podcast.
Right.
Like we're not spending $1 million a year to do this. All things considered, it's pretty reasonable, but it's coming out of your pocket, which eventually comes out of our pockets.
Yeah.
And to me, the bare minimum is we're donating a lot of our time to this. We're donating a lot of our energy to this. A lot of people are getting value from this. And so to me, I would love to see the people that are getting value from this at the very least help us to break even.
Yeah. And I think people would. Honestly, I think, there's
We haven't given them the opportunity.
we haven't given the and the other thing it provides is like it doesn't matter what your income is. Like let's say you make, $10,000 a year. You can give $5. Like
Once.
out of your
So
income.
we're all in agreement. We should open that up. I have a question.
But if we got any millionaires out there that
What
wanna,
is a Raid Shadow Legends ad?
That's a game.
That is a game, and it's it pops up like whenever you're like if you're watching like Twitch or whatever. I'm assuming Twitch or YouTube, they'll show those ads for different games that you can download and whatnot.
All right, Duke, go ahead and sign us up.
Do we want to have an aggressive sponsorship drive? Do
Dude,
we want
please don't do
do we
that.
want to do we want to seriously say we would love to get some sponsors?
What do you mean by sponsors?
That's where we do the commercial, or that's where we put some kind of a thing where, hey, this episode sponsored by Rough Greens or whatever it might be. This episode sponsored by Giant Eagle. I don't know. That's what I mean by sponsorship. They say, hey, we'll sponsor this episode for $100.
I would say I align a lot more with Eric in that like I do not inherently want businesses to support us, like for advertising and whatnot. You
don't want to be owned.
Well, yeah, because and that's a good point because sorry, go ahead.
No, that was kind of funny how you interrupted him interrupting me.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm
So I
gonna
don't know
interrupt.
if you need to apologize
And
to
then
him or me.
I caught myself.
Right. But yeah, I agree with you in that, and that's something else somebody's going to have to do. Like,
Right.
we
It's
sit
a
at
job.
the table,
It's a
we
job.
hang out,
Yeah.
and then there's rules.
And then there's rules because like that's the beauty of like the pirate ship is we make our own rules because we have our own income.
Right. And if we
coming
bother
from-
you, then don't give us any more money. It's cool.
Right. And because there was somebody that I was talking to the other day, and they really want us to do a certain topic and talk about it, but that topic is very controversial. I would love to talk about it, but if we have if we're sponsored by
Corporate money.
If we're sponsored by
big
Rough
pharma.
Greens and then they hear that episode, then they're like, well, you can't do that. Just like on Adam Carolla, I don't know if he does it anymore, but there was a time where he would have certain advertisers and he couldn't swear on his podcast. So it's like,
I want to swear. As
And
often
we,
as I can.
I know we
are-
swear.
So
like
let's,
sailors.
yeah, I mean, and again, let's deal with that when Mohan says, hey, thanks for having your on location podcast.
Yeah.
We want to give you $500. Okay, we can cross that bridge when we get there.
Sure.
But until that time, we're not going to aggressively go seek that.
Right.
So you think value for value should be number one? It should open right this second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should go to how.
Right.
Do we want to have an incentive model? Again, not, like a tiered model. Like, hey, we talked about this way in the past.
Yeah.
That you officially produce the show if you give X amount. And literally we can say you are a producer of the Lunchtime on Road podcast.
Well, just like you do with Jomez. Talk about what you do with Jomez.
Well, I would say not just like, but
Similar.
similar, because that's more of a Patreon model where, because I give $20 and
There's
10
tier
cents,
lists on
There's
that.
tiers.
Yeah.
Where you get things at certain tiers. Like I get 20% off on their store, and I get my name on their podcast on their shows on YouTube. And I get subscriber only content. Like I don't want to get into subscriber only content, everything else.
Right.
Yeah.
It's more, again, to the no agenda model of, hey, once you give X amount, we'll call you this. And it's just a fun thing. It doesn't
Right.
get you anything.
That brings to. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. Go
Well,
off
one
as
thing
a
we
bus
said was
boy.
the person who has given the most over X amount of time, you're sitting at the head of the table.
Right.
Or if once you give
You're the chef.
$250, you get your own wine
When we
glass.
spend
Yeah,
5 minutes
yeah.
in that episode, if you become ahead of the table, hey,
Hey, sitting down head of the table today. How about this guy?
Right,
Right. And once you give X amount, you get your own engraved glass, wine
Right.
glass.
Right. Whatever we figured
and
out
that
to be.
and that ties right in. I was going to bring up merch because I think that we have so many good sayings and things that have topics.
every drop could be a shirt.
Oh my gosh, we could have so many cool T-shirts. And
Emotional needs are the devil.
thanks, Duke.
but that becomes one more thing for
Well,
somebody to manage.
We can do that through like drop shipping.
We can do that.
It's
Who can do that?
in order to set it up. That's
Who
a thing.
we?
It's not going to be an immediate thing, but we can do that over time.
I love a good T-shirt.
Yeah, I think before we talk about that, we need a bigger audience. Honestly,
Yeah, and so it's almost like a chicken and the egg thing too, because everything we talk about can fall back to, well, okay, we need an audience to do this, but if we did this, then would that bring the audience? And it's like,
Duke wants royalties from his quote.
Okay,
Nice.
no problem, Duke.
We'll
give you
75%.
75% of zero royalties. At this
That's right.
but yeah, I feel like it's almost like you got to inch a little bit this way so that this inches up. Like we need to grow a little bit of viewership so that we can then attract a guest that might not have wanted to come on before because they know that they'll be heard a little bit more. And then once we get that guest, then our viewership might go up, and then we can attract a slightly bigger guest. You know what I mean? Like inching.
there's going to be a lot of things that do work hand in hand.
Yeah.
Number one is the growing of the audience, and while growing the audience, simultaneously be very intentional about the value for value model. And those are two wings on the same plane. And then as you grow your audience, as you get more value for value, then you introduce a merch kind of a thing.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
That makes sense.
there's very much a step-by-step process to it.
I think we look at what can we do. There's a lot of things we'd like to do, but what can we do?
Substack.
You can certainly work on that. We can certainly be more focused on getting more and wider and broader and more in-depth guests.
And
I think-
also the reviews, man. Like I obviously right now, if you are listening and you haven't at this point gone through and given us a review or a star, please do so. I know we say it when we open our show, but if you've been listening for 3 years,
Does that matter though? Like
In
I've
the- in the
never
alg-
looked at a
in the
podcast in the
algorithms?
algorithm. Is that what it is?
and it's all yeah.
definitely star rating.
Well, and
yeah.
it matters to people who are perusing, going, oh, okay, this podcast has 5 stars, and there's 600
That's so
reviews.
dumb.
Social proof.
I'm not
It's called
saying it's
social
not
proof.
real. I'm just saying it's dumb.
But so those are the things that I think we could right now be intentional about. Implementing a value for value. Please go rate us, and not in an obnoxious way, but in a way that we are reminding people to do that. Even if we break into the middle of an episode, hey, at this point, would you go just take 5 minutes, 5 seconds, and go
Right.
give us a 5-star review. You know what I mean? Because I mean, we're saying it at the beginning of every episode, but like you said, most people are probably going to just click right through that.
Yeah, gloss over.
So
Duke
I
brings
like
up
it.
another point, and
I'm done.
no, because that's the whole super chat. Not for us to have one per se, because I don't love that idea either. Because then
super chat?
So
Nah.
like you pay $5, and then we'll call your name out when you bought a $5 super chat.
A lot of gamers do that, and it works.
Right.
For a gaming setting, like while you're watching and you're just playing a game,
Right.
and then
You get your
pause
comments
and-
right on the air.
right.
But he said we could purchase super chats on like-minded podcasts. So say, hey, thanks so
yeah.
much. Love what you're doing.
Yeah.
Check out lunchtimeandrome.com. So it's a $5 advertisement or a $2.50 or whatever it is. That's actually kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Duke, after you
I
set
dig
up our merch shop, I want you to go ahead and start running some super chats. Appreciate that too. But that is an interesting idea. Like I was watching a podcast the other day, like stumbled on it on Facebook, and it was just a famous person that I followed. I'm like, and like they were in a car, and it was just weird. And I'm just like watching it, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna super chat," and I'm like, "Gosh, that's so dumb." But they asked the girl to take her shirt off.
Well,
She didn't.
good. But like no agenda people do that when they donate. Sometimes they'll promote their business. You know,
Right.
Yeah,
They don't. Yeah.
yeah, like the meat family,
All different kinds of people.
the
Yeah.
farmers. Yeah,
Yeah, and like in the No Agenda podcast, like if you give $200 or more, you get to read a note. Though you can write a note and they'll read it. And so some people are like, "Hey, thanks so much. We appreciate this, and we're going to give 25% off to everybody who orders through our meat, company."
right.
And they advertise that way, and it costs them $200 and whatever else. I mean, we can get to that,
Right.
But I think we need to set that up sooner than later. The value for value and feature it in the at the table each week.
Yeah,
Something else I think that we could do right now that we talked about earlier, and I say we, but I'm volunteering, is to put out like the clips. Like if there is a way,
You're volunteering for that?
yeah,
That would be extremely helpful.
if there is a way for Eric, who has the video, if it's not too large a video, to get it into my hands through Google Drive or something, then we could make notes through the episode, like, "Ooh, this is a good clip," and I could write that down, the time, and then
Timestamps.
do you know how to
yeah.
do that? Do you know how to do video editing?
I can
Editing?
do a little bit. I mean, basic stuff. Yeah. I mean, I can literally clip a video and put like a little intro.
yeah. It doesn't need to be
Slide
anything
to it or
like
something.
crazy, you
Yeah.
know, because and it doesn't even need an intro. Because like one of the ones I always use, Nate Land and their podcast, like it'll be an Instagram reel. And one frustration let me ask you guys this: talking like we're at the table. When you scroll through Instagram, and like it's something that you want to hear, but it's muted. And then you like have to click, but then you can't restart the video to like from the beginning, like after you've unmuted it. You know
For
what
me,
I'm
it
saying?
always works when I hit the volume. If I put
Yeah,
up
I
the
just hit
volume
the
up or
volume
down.
on my phone.
But then I want to go back in the video. Like I want to rewind the video.
I don't care that much about any video I've ever watched in my life.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like if you look, if
Don't you scroll up and down, and it'll come back onto the beginning?
I think you can do that. Yeah, yeah, I've done that.
But sometimes I've done that and it doesn't. It keeps on going. So it's, I don't know.
But then,
Whatever. You're not very
then when we're talking about this too, we're also talking about everybody has the words now. Like you have to write the words.
There's actually an app that does that, and
Great.
it works really good.
Awesome.
What do you mean, like closed captioning? Or?
Kind of
Okay.
it spells out the words.
Right. So
as
if you
somebody's talking.
if you are on your
volume
phone
down.
on mute, yeah.
Yeah. But no, listen. All my experience is on iMovie. Like that's what I've used.
Oh,
For
that's what a lot
clips.
of people
Yeah.
use because it's so simple.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just click and drag and whatever. Like I would totally be okay and actually kind of stoked to do that.
Just want to announce that I've officially become my grandfather.
Why?
When the conversation goes past me, my ability to understand or have any expertise, I just go, nah. Just throw my hands up. Whatever. Do what you want.
Okay, cool. We'll work on that
Okay.
because they are going to be large files.
That'd be great if you did that.
Yeah,
That would
that'd be awesome.
fantastic.
We'll buy you some terabytes.
We'll buy you some terabytes.
Well, there. Yeah.
Might need to.
Might need to. Yeah.
Patton wants us to have 5 cameras.
Dude, Pat, I have thought about
Multiple
that.
angles.
I would like some different camera angles. That would be something after we get some monetization going, getting some.
You're
better,
talking about like some post editing though.
well, better produced. No, because I can switch to different cameras on this if we had it.
Interesting.
So and
Based
I
on who's talking or
yeah, like,
whatever.
right. So, but that takes we just need some money.
We can
and-
tell we're at the 50-minute mark because I'm starting to lose it. Because I was like, oh, there's an app for that. It'll just go to whoever's talking.
But
should
to
be.
Patton's point, though, it is important. It is engaging when you're watching because Nate, they do that on their. If you watch their video, like it'll zoom in on somebody.
Ooh, speaking of post edit though, is that even the right term? I don't even know.
Post production.
Post production. Thank you. And again, this is more work for somebody, but it's just an idea I'm throwing out there. Is like whenever we are talking about a certain emotional need or whatever, we could have like a graphic on the screen and like a quick description of what it is, or I mean that's a very general idea, but like some other bit of topic
Link
that
to
we're,
previous podcasts where we talk about that emotional need.
right. Any
Yeah,
something,
that'd be great.
We can do all that stuff. It
Right.
just takes.
Someone
I mean,
to do it.
well, and we can do it live too. Depending on what
You'd-
we're doing, because
you'd
we
have
talked
to-
about doing sounds.
you have to have a lot of things like sort of preset.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it can be a button.
That's so cool.
Like we could have all the emotional needs and their definitions ready to go.
Because that's one thing, like, and I know we talked about, well, we can't hire anybody right now. We don't have any money for that, and we don't, to someone to actually be our like in studio producer. But like, if we're talking about
I would do
wanting to get better guests, or just bigger guests or whatever, more guests,
I'm the biggest
and
one.
a bigger audience, like that production value, I think would be a pretty cool thing. If we can increase our
Totally.
production value, then that shows. I don't know, just a
How
higher
more legit we
quality
are?
of content,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah,
I don't know too many podcasts that have better audio. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I'm telling you, there's some awful podcast audio out there, and
In good podcasts.
and
in
and
famous
good-
podcasts.
Yeah, right.
We need more sound effects.
That's what it is.
I'm just kidding.
like a morning show.
No, the bow 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 one's the one I want.
Yeah,
That's what I'm talking about.
I'll work on that.
That makes it popular.
I also want to understand our audience better too. Like
Yes.
right now in my mind, when I think about this podcast, I see my mom. I see our friends on Facebook. I don't know when they do it. I don't know if they watch it on YouTube at some point. I don't know if they're listening to it on Spotify. Those kind of things to me would be very interesting to be able to better meet everybody where they're at. And I think over time that will become much more important. I don't know if it's super important right this second. I'd be curious to see if we have worldwide listeners. So those are some analytical things that I think that it would be worth it for us to understand, and then over time, as we do develop a bigger audience, to really hone in on.
We might. Let me look at SoundCloud. I know we get location information in SoundCloud, so I can tell you like city, state, country. I don't know if I get which platform they listen on, but let me look in and see what
That's
the
certainly
analytics are for
that. I mean, that couldn't be more your. It's not necessarily your category, but it ain't anybody else's.
Duke brings up perhaps an updated logo, which we
No,
have
that's
discussed
Patton.
before. Oh, I thought it was. Oh, my apologies. I missed the name. Sorry, Patton. Good idea, Patton.
Hey, I like-
we have discussed that before.
Yeah, I threw that logo together in about 10
3
minutes. And
But how about we keep the clock, and then instead of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like for the clock, each one's an emotional need.
it'll be a very busy logo.
Quarter past affection.
Respect the clock.
Half past respect. We need a surfboard.
Soundboard.
Oh,
I weep for both of your eyes.
I
Sights.
thought Duke said we need a
We
surfboard.
we have a soundboard,
I think he
Yeah.
means like a.
like for like the sound effects.
Oh yeah.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this here, tech team.
Yeah.
Very often I will hear something on the radio or on a TV show or whatever, would our podcast be better if we had the ability to, or if we did do like a clip from a movie or a clip from a TV show, and then we were able to talk about it?
Sure.
Or
You mean
clip
we can do that.
like parse something?
yeah, like just say
Yeah.
like, oh, watch
Like
this
watch
scene,
the Goodfellas and
and say, yeah, when
Here's
he
an
calls him
example of-
oh,
clown.
no respect.
Yeah, here's an example of bad emotional
that would be
responding
great.
and
I think
good-
that'd be fun.
Because
That'd
we've
be
said that with
awesome.
social media. We had the one episode where we read people's comments on social media, but there
No.
are so many television shows.
would we run into any kind of like if
Copyright?
Yeah.
No, yeah, because you can use
10-second or something.
no, that's like a song. Like you can
Okay.
only use like a. But if you're playing
CCLI twitching over
because
here.
people do it on YouTube all the time. They'll play a segment or like
Sure.
they'll do a game
Reaction
and they'll,
videos.
right? So like you can definitely do it. It's just that you're
You have
not
to
like
give-
you're just. I
Do you
don't
have to
think you
give credit
any.
like in the description?
Maybe.
don't know,
We can figure that out. But I don't think you need
Fair
to.
use, Duke says.
Yeah, I think it's fair use as long as you're not like rebroadcasting it for your monetization. Meaning like you're just gonna put like the movie Tombstone on YouTube and you're just gonna reap the benefits of all the money.
Right.
My dad, who used to record Monday Night Football and send it to his customers in Japan.
No way.
Well, Westinghouse did it.
That's amazing.
They did it for a while.
That's
That's your
amazing.
dad.
His company. It wasn't him.
Oh, okay.
That's funny.
Yeah. They shut that down.
All right.
Pete Rozelle.
I'm good.
It's a good start.
Yeah.
It is a lot of good
I think we have some
conversation.
Did we
That-
leave anything on the table?
I do want to reiterate, like, if you are interested in helping in any way,
Send
whether
your
it be
resume
with
in.
social media or anything, we are looking for somebody that's serious about taking it
Yeah.
on. Like, it's not like this is.
So what are we looking for exactly?
Um,
Role and responsibility. Social media coordinator.
social media coordinator that would handle all social media.
You can put
would,
that on a resume.
That would put. Yeah, you could.
College students.
And
Mia DeFazio.
putting like our social media posts together and physically posting them, all that stuff would be
That would be huge.
so great, like throughout the week, because like that's the thing, like people,
Right.
I'm not saying we need to post every day,
We
but
post
we need
like
to
once
post
a week at like 4 o'clock.
yeah,
on
like
Wednesday.
it's not like it's low effort, like we don't we all have full-time jobs, families, things going on for church, like we're not trying to make excuses,
All
but
4
like
of us are very busy.
but a lot of these people that do all these things, like they're doing it for a living and they have time to do it throughout the day. So, and we don't. But if you are serious about helping, send us an email at lunchtimeinrome.com, or if you know us, just text us, reach out.
If you want to donate,
If you want to donate,
we can accommodate that.
we will have a place for that.
If we have given you value in the past 6 months or year and you want to donate, or if we've ever given you value at all, we let us get in touch with us and let us know.
Yeah.
And then we're going to continue to work up a way to do the value for value thing on a more consistent basis that's much more consistent.
Good word. Well,
like it.
with that, we're going to consistently wrap up episode 173. Quite a conversation this evening, and we thank you guys who joined us at the table. Excellent input. Anyone out there who is listening on YouTube later, and you want to give us a comment, give us your thoughts. That's really what we're looking for. We're interested in your thoughts, our listeners' thoughts on all these topics. So we thank you for joining us. Don't forget to visit us at lunchtimeinrome.com. Give us a follow and like on social media, and take our relational needs questionnaire. Thanks for joining us at the table at Lunchtime in Rome.
See you next week.
Bye.
Everybody text Storm Dr. Phil. Bye.